that we signed. This is now, we lost the building in June, the last Sunday of June. We packed everything up. We were trying to marry this. We couldn't connect it. We didn't get this building in time. So we had to put all our stuff in storage. Then as soon as we closed on June, the last Sunday, it got locked down. All of Sydney got locked down. I thought, wow. In a sense, it's good because we didn't have a building anyway. Like, we lost our building. It was for us, because we'd have to find a function center, set it up. It costs a lot of money to do that. You'll be surprised how much money it costs to lease just on a Sunday, for one Sunday. And then all the work to set up, set down. And that was literally locked down. Then the week after, we were able to sign this. I had to leave Blacktown, I felt like I was breaking the law, but I wasn't. I was allowed to do it, but I wasn't allowed to go 5-kilometer radius. But I feel like a criminal almost, but I wasn't. I'm just listening to God, and it's okay. You can buy a building at that point. So I left. I went to the solicitor's office, which is around here, and we signed and emptied our bank accounts and put $1.2 million for a call option, which we believed very clearly it was a deposit and a call option. And then in that 2-year period, most of you know the story, within the first year, that's a miracle of itself, the renovation of building of this whole place. We can go on, and CJ, Tatiana come to us right at the right time, and he's a developer, and she's an architect, so they both volunteered their services and oversaw the work, and we sacrificially gave, again, over $600,000 towards renovating this building. And that's actually cheap. When I tell people, they go, what? You renovated everything for that amount of money? You do that with a house. And by God's grace, we renovated. That's amazing. That's another amazing miracle. Amazing milestone, amazing miracle. Got to remind ourselves all the miracles along the way that God's been with us. And the course of the 2 years, we still had $450,000 in our bank account, even though we renovated everything. And that brought us to early May. So early May, we just reminding us all the miracles. There's heaps of miracles. I can just... There's others I haven't told you, because God had to break through even to sell the property. And I won't tell you the miracle there, but it was a powerful miracle in the owner's heart. But where are we? Early May, which is only 2 months ago, we had $450,000. And now, after the response of all our generosity, our church has been so extremely generous. And I'm moved deeply because of people's response, people's faith, people's sacrificially giving. And I know it means different things to each one of us, the way we've given. I know that God sees your heart. And I know that God will take care of us, because he's the one that took the widow, the 2 mites of the widow. Jesus did. You know, Jesus goes, no, keep those 2 mites. You better not give that to the temple. He allowed her to give it. You know what I mean? Elijah's the one that asked that widow, give me that last meal first. I know it's your last meal, and you and your 2 sons your son was going to die. Eat it and die. That's what she said, is give it to me first. And so I believe the Bible. I know God's provision. I know He takes care of us, and so on. So I know God will take care of us 100%. We pray that all the time. And so in 2 months' time, we are at the moment in approximate about $1.35 million has come in. That has come in. That's phenomenal. You can give yourselves a hand clap and rejoice and praise. But that's pretty amazing. That's absolutely miraculous, really, with the size church. You've got to think of the size church of where we're at. When other people ask and they tell us, and we tell them the story, they respond with disbelief. What? And the generosity of us as people, and it's phenomenal. And in the middle of that, it's amazing. And now I just want to show you that we're 4.5 weeks away from settlement. To quickly explain too that, without going into the bigger details, our solicitors told us, okay, you need to make the exchange, which was 2 weeks ago. And to make an exchange of a contract, you have to put $1.1 million down as a deposit. I said, no, you must be mistaken. We gave the deposit at $1.2 million. The call option was the deposit. We called it the deposit. We understood it as a deposit. But the solicitors, I think, could have made a better interpretation of the negotiation, the spirit of the negotiation of the deal. So I spoke to a real estate agent. Yeah, he goes, I believe that was the deposit. The $1.2 million was the deposit back 2 years ago. Spoke to the owner. He understood it that way too. He goes, well, that's what I thought. I thought that was a deposit. But cut a long story short, his solicitor saying to him, if they haven't got the money now, after 2 years, to give a 1.1, maybe they're not ready. And so he was putting doubt in his mind, and he instructs his solicitor to our solicitor, no, we need the 1.1 million, which was 2 weeks ago. So we signed and we gave $1.1 million for that deposit. So we've given $2.3 million that's already as a deposit of this building. We've invested $600,000 to $700,000 of renovation. It's around about the amount. And that's $3 million. It's pretty amazing. And so we know, and this is all because God spoke. This is all because God has led us. It's all because God's directed us. Obviously, I'm being really honest and vulnerable. We've never done this before. It's not like, you've done that with 5 other, projects or 5 other churches. Never. This is our first time we've ever walked into something this great, this magnitude, this faith journey. And it has been a 2-year faith journey. And I've always said to us as a church, it feels like the Red Sea when Moses opened up the Red Sea. I mean, that was even before we ever committed to this building. I remember in one of my holidays at Coffs Harbour praying about, should we do this, Lord, shouldn't we, and all this. And the Lord reminded me Moses. Look at the story of Moses. He took one plus over 1 million people, but with children, it could have been anywhere between 2 or 3 million people out of Egypt. And the journey out of Egypt, and they got into the 2 gorges, went through, and the Red Sea was right in front of them and the enemies behind them. I mean, it looked bad. It got so bad, because sometimes things get worse before they get better. Sometimes it looks like the enemy's closing in. And everyone's saying to Moses, what, weren't there any graves in Egypt? Why are you letting us out here? Because you didn't have graves over there? You want to kill us all here? They got negative. Because they could see the enemy. They can see the Egyptian army coming. They can see the smoke going up in the horizon. They can see they're closing in on us. But in God's glory, the glory cloud that was directing them, during the day it was cloud. During the night it was a fire. That moved behind them and protected them from the enemy. God knew he was never going to let the enemy come close. And then God, as Moses is, Lord, he cries out to God, and God says, why are you crying out to me? Stretch forth your hand and stretch forth your rod and speak to the Red Sea. And so he does, as you know, and the Red Sea opened up. It took about, I think overnight, the wind came and broke up the water, and the water went up as a heap. So it's supernatural. It's not just dried up and they could walk on splashy water. And then when the army came in, they got drowned with, 5-centimeter water. No, it went up to a wall. But when you're walking through, even if it takes you, half a day, 1 day, how long is it going to take for 1 million people to get through or 2 million people to get through? As they're walking through, you'd be going, Lord, keep the walls up. Oh, God, keep the walls up. You got your little children, you got your grandmother, you got everybody, you got your stuff. Just keep the walls up. This is a miracle. This is amazing. And that's how I felt for 2 years. Lord, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is phenomenal. This is God. This is grace. This is God's provision. Keep the walls up, Lord. And I suppose you've got to realize, Lord, if you're doing the miracle, then you're going to keep the walls up. That I'm just being honest how I've been feeling for 2 years. So we've been believing, trusting God for 2 years. And then the Lord one time said to me, Leo, go check what happened at the end when they got through. When they got through, I looked and in the Bible, read the scriptures, God told Moses to speak to the waters and to close. Wow. What authority that God gives mankind. Didn't just happen automatically. God didn't just do it. God says, Moses, once you get all the people through, then you speak to the Red Sea. Wow. That's pretty amazing. And I've always known that's hard to explain this, and I'm just trying to help us understand what I focus my faith on, in the sense, if I believe we're going to barely make it, then we'll just barely make it. If I put my faith out that God, you're a God of abundance and we're going to make it with great abundance and more than enough, then that's what we'll receive. It really, really is important how I'm the lead guy here, and with the eldership team, if we as an eldership team sort of let's just have the faith just to barely make it. Let's have the faith to make the deal, close the deal, and then when in the next 2 years we scrape through and we just pay the repayments and it's stretchy in the next 2 years. No, if we're believing for that, guess what? We'll get what you believe. What you see, you end up getting what you see. So it's very important we stay in faith. And this whole message is about, guys, we've put the foot on the pedal of faith. Like, keep it on. I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to all of us. Let's keep the pedal on the faith. Put the foot on the pedal of faith. Don't take it off. It's not like, oh, God, great, we're almost there. We'll go by the acceleration now. We'll go by the momentum. We've got some good momentum, and let's just momentum slows down, and we put the foot off, and we just get through. Well, that's what we're believing for as a people. Is that how we see our God? Is that how we see our Father? Do we really believe He's Jehovah Jireh? Yes. And I thought about the Red Sea. Please hear my heart. I thought about it and said, Lord, it's actually very interesting that you delivered them that way. Because if you didn't take them through the Red Sea and they went into the Promised Land another way, or if they hanged around, if the armies of Egypt, if Pharaoh didn't go after them, he would have got after them a few days later. If the Red Sea didn't happen, maybe a month later, because we know Pharaoh kept changing his mind 10 times with all the plagues. And eventually he would have said, no way, this is not good. We don't have our slaves anymore. They were working, they were building Egypt. We were so prosperous, they were doing all our slave labor. We go get them. Let's go get them. They would have gone after him at some point. God wanted a complete victory, a complete cutoff from the enemy. Because when they got through, it wasn't just the armies of Egypt. Pharaoh was there too, and the armies of Egypt, the elite armies of Egypt, the greatest chariots, and they were all completely destroyed. There was no chance once they got through that Pharaoh's dead. Pharaoh can't change his mind when he's dead. I'm just trying to help us see it's complete victory. God actually wants us to see complete victory. We've got to believe for that. And so there's so many amazing miracles that we have seen, that God has done. It's phenomenal. God showed me Nehemiah. He reminded me about Nehemiah, the story of Nehemiah, because Nehemiah was moved because, what happened to the lights? It went dark? You turn the light on a bit. What was the screen? I can't see you. So. But Nehemiah, he finds, he asked about the welfare of Jerusalem. The city of Jerusalem was lying in ruins, no walls, and all the gates were burnt, so they're completely exposed to the enemy, and the enemy's attacked. But you got to remember, please understand, the city of Jerusalem has been like that for 70 years. That's a long time since Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the city. But Nehemiah has moved as a leader. He's moved. The Bible says he started feeling a burden for his people, and he was sad in the presence of the king. He never was sad in the presence of the king before, ever. Even the king responded and says, hey, how come you're sad? You've never been sad in my presence. He says, it's because my people, they're under reproach. The city walls are completely destroyed, and my people are in reproach. So he felt for his people, but he could see something that no one else saw anymore. Everyone else got used to the fact that the city of Jerusalem is destroyed, that it's under reproach. Please hear what I'm saying, because this is what a leader's job should be. This is what our leadership job should be. We see the need. We see what's possible. We see that Jerusalem could be rebuilt, could have safety, could have walls, could have the gates, and people could live in there with security and safety from the enemy. But right now, the city of God, the New Jerusalem is in ruins, and there's reproach, there's shame, there's fear. Everyone's in fear. Everyone's afraid of the enemy. But Nehemiah had a heart to see it restored, and faith to see it restored, believed it could be done. 70 years it's been ruins, but Nehemiah gathers and rallies, and it's interesting how he does it, but the book of Nehemiah is phenomenal. If you have a read of it, and have a read, the first 4 or 5 chapters really explains the story quite well. But at one point he goes and he sort of scours the land and looks for the strategy and just starts thinking, okay, this needs to be done. The walls are destroyed here badly. And we're talking about walls of 12 meters high. That's how much they restored them. They're completely destroyed, but they built it 12 foot high. Imagine 12 meters and 2.5 meters wide. We're talking about a wall that can keep the enemy out. But they also had to build the gates to keep them safe. And guess the only way for that to happen is to get everyone on board. He had to motivate everyone. There's one point, if you read it in Nehemiah 12, he says, verse 15, chapter 2, Nehemiah 2, verse 15. So I went up at night by the ravine and inspected the wall. Then I entered the valley gate again and returned. He talked about, he's expecting everything, all the different gates and all the walls, to picking up the end part. Verse 16, the officials did not know where I had gone or what I had done, nor had they as yet told the Jews. As yet, I didn't tell the Jews that were living there. I haven't talked to the people, which would have been thousands of them. I didn't talk to the priests. I didn't talk to the nobles. I never talked to the officials. We're talking about all the leaders of the city. All the rest who did the work, I haven't spoken to them there up until this point. Then I said to them, this is when he spoke to them, to those leaders and to the Jews and to the priests. You see the bad situation we are in, that Jerusalem is desolate and its gates burned by fire? Come, let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem so that we will no longer be a reproach among the people. Let us rebuild. He had to ask him. There's something powerful about asking. Nehemiah asked everybody else, can we do this job? Can we get on board? Can we all do this? And everyone responded. I mean, it says here, I told them how the hand of my God had been favorable to me, and also about the king's words, which he had spoken to me. So the king himself sent him and gave him favor and so on. But he reminded them of the favor of God on his life. And that's why I'm reminding us of all the miracles, all the hand of God. How we got here is God's hand, God's miracles, God's provision. Then they said, let us arise and build. They all responded, let us arise and build. So they put their hands to the work, to the good work. But when Shambalat and Horonite and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard it, they mocked us and despised us and said, what is this thing you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king? What are you trying to do, trying to rebuild Jerusalem? You're rebelling? You want to create your own movement? You want to become king? They actually accused him of all these things. And there was an enemy that kept rising up against him. He didn't like the enemy didn't like what Nehemiah had faith for. And I'm talking about the city of Jerusalem as a physical city, and obviously the walls that speak of protection. The Bible does say the walls of salvation, it's found in Isaiah 61, and the gates of praise. So you want to symbolically change it into our context. Walls of salvation. What are we doing this for? So we can build up the walls of salvation. And we can have the gates of praise. And this can be a city of God, a spiritual city of God, where people can join and get saved and get set free and get delivered. Is it the physical building? No, it's the people that we're fighting for. Because whenever we have to leave this building, we'll sell it for whatever price. And guess what? We'll go somewhere else. But at least we're in a position that we'll buy that building, we'll buy that land, and we'll have church there. Because you can have church anywhere. You can have church in the park. But you try having church in the park on a 40-degree day. Try to have church in the park when it's pouring down raining. It's not practical. And there are many, many things like that. When we'll be the head, not the tail. We're not servants to the lender. At any moment, you just lose your building, you have to pack up and go somewhere else. Packing up, setting down. Packing up. There's a lot of work involved with that. And if you really get a revelation of the king, you realize we're the ones who should own everything. The Bible actually teaches us that. Old Testament covenant says we should be the lenders, not the borrowers. How much more in the New Testament? We're kings and priests unto our God. This is what it means to rule, to reign, to take authority. Or else we become the ones that always just barely making it. Anyway, what are we fighting for? The glory of God. To establish a city of God. It's a spiritual city. But at the moment, for that fight, it is converted, translated, if I can say it that way, to buy this physical building. It is. It is a reflection. Even our offerings and our sacrifice to give, it's a reflection of how much we believe in the vision of God, the purposes of God, seeing people saved, seeing people set free. There is a reflection to that. And obviously, and I put myself in your shoes. I put myself in, if I was a believer in this church, it's an issue of trust. 100% there's trust. So I fully understand. So please, I'm not speaking, first of all, I'm not speaking to, I'm speaking to us as a whole, as a family. Let's do this together. Let's fight together. Let's continue putting faith on the pedal together right to the end, and even when we're through. Because it's not like, oh, we made it. Okay, let's just stop fighting. No. In this instance, when you read here, you read the whole chapter 3, it says, and next to him they built, and next to him that family built, and next to him they built that part of the wall, and next to him the priest built the sheep gate, because the sheep gate had to do with the offerings that the priest had. It was connected to them. And so on and so on. He goes, and next to them they built, and next to them, and unto them, and to them, and to them. It was next to them they built. It went on for a whole chapter. It must have said it 40, 50 times. It's given us a picture. They rebuilt, they repaired, they rebuilt, they repaired. And as they did that, the enemy got angry. The more they restored, spiritually speaking. Look in chapter 4, verse 6. So we built the wall, and the whole wall was joined together to half its height. For the people had a mind to work. Half its height. They still got to go another 6 meters probably, right? But when that happened, now when Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, the Ammonites, the Ashdodites heard that the repair of the walls of Jerusalem went on and that the breaches began to be closed, they were very angry. All of them conspired together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause disturbance in it. The enemy gets angry because, oh no, they're getting together, they're working it together, they're working as one. They're fighting this battle together. The enemy gets upset to disturb. And I can't explain it any other way, but there has been the enemy trying to disturb. Of course he's going to try. Of course he's threatened by it. Why wouldn't he? Just have to hear the prophetic words that have ever been spoken over your lives and the GGC church that would make the enemy be threatened. True? No, let's be real. Because he's going to be threatened. I don't want GGC to get through this in an abundant way. I've got to do whatever I can. Do what I can to scatter them. Do what I can to get them off. And so when you pick it up from verse 11 of chapter 4, our enemies said they will not know or see until we come among and kill them and put a stop to them. This is a serious threat. They want to fight them. They want to kill them while they're working. When the Jews lived near them and came and told us 10 times, they will come up against us from every place where you may turn. Then I stationed men. This is Nehemiah's response. Please hear this. Nehemiah was a brilliant man of God, a brilliant servant, and a brilliant strategic leader. Then I stationed men in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall, the exposed places. And I stationed the people in families with their swords, with their spears, and with their bows. When I saw their fear, I rose and spoke to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people. Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, fight for your sons, fight for your daughters, fight for your wives, fight for your houses. Why are we fighting? For our family, for your sons and your daughters, for your next generation that comes after you. Like, or else oh no, I'm just fighting for me, just me. I'm doing this for me. No, we're fighting for our families. You've got to see what we're fighting for. What you just saw here, all these testimonies. I'm in tears because, Lord, there's way more out there that need the gospel of Jesus. How many people need the love of Jesus, the forgiveness of Christ? The good news that you can be forgiven for free. That's what we're fighting for. And he says, at the exposed places, that means where the walls weren't fully restored yet and the enemy could get through, he'd put people there with swords. At one point he said, go sleep there. He says, go into the city and sleep there at nighttime, guard it at night, work by day. And so they were serious about guarding it. And I think, what are the exposed places? What are the vulnerable places where the enemy tries to get in? Please hear my heart. Disappointment. Expectation that you had and it didn't get met by us as a church or us as leaders. Mindsets. Well, I thought this was going to happen. It didn't happen. Just disappointment, discouragement, just little things to distract you. It can be just distractions of the world. You get so busy at work, so busy at stuff, other things, and you forget the purpose, the kingdom, why you're here for. You're here for the king. You're here for the kingdom. You're here for the purpose of the king. Please hear my heart. I'm trying to help us see. I see Nehemiah, he got them to work together. And it says, when the enemies heard that it was known to us that God had frustrated their plan, then all of us returned to the wall, each one to his work. From that day on, half of my servants carried the work, while half of them held the spears, the shields, the bows, and the breastplate. This is a team effort. And the captains were behind the whole house of Judah. Those who were rebuilding the wall and those who carried the burdens took their load with one hand doing the work and the other hand holding a weapon. Can you picture that? I'm going to build this, but I'm going to hold the weapon at the same time. I've got to keep this at my side just in case the enemy comes. This is like stance ready for war. This is stance ready to fight. Keep building, but keep fighting. Keep building, but keep fighting. They were like that. And at one point, half of them had swords, spears, and shields and ready to fight, and the others were building. But at another point, he says they all had, it says, as for the builders, each wore his sword girded at his side as he built, while the trumpet stood near me. So what was happening, I mean, it's very, very clear. Let me read it, just so you can trust me that I'm not just telling us my own story. I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated on the wall far from one another. And whatever place you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there, and God will fight for us. Basically, the wall is all around the whole city of Jerusalem. It's miles and miles and miles long. If I'm fixing this part of it and it's low and it's exposed, and then someone really, really far away, they won't hear us if they get attacked. I can't hear them if they're getting attacked. So the trumpeter would be there. There'll be a person with that means rally over and fight with them to keep the enemy out from coming into the city. Can you see the togetherness, the fight of we're all in this together? Amen. It's that one purpose, that's what the enemy hates. Because that's what the enemy was trying to attack them. And he said, we've got to do this together. Keep the weapon. And all I'm saying is, where's the sword of the Spirit? Make sure it's in your mouth. How we do it now is the sword of the Spirit being on our mouth. Full of faith, full of agreement. We believe this is possible. With man, it's not possible. With God, it's possible. It's faith. It's trusting. And I love when I see the intercessors up there praying in the mornings. Some of you don't know, but there's a whole group of women and some men. Should be way more men. Please, in my heart, we should have way more men up there. We see a lot of women. They're praying, interceding. What are they doing? They're warfaring. Praying in the Spirit, picking up in the Spirit, seeing in the Spirit, having faith in the Spirit, and then speaking it out, declaring it. And it helps carry, it helps fight the fight. And that's just one little part. I mean, everything, the worship, we're all little. I just see us all together. In that instant, imagine saying, look, I'll pray. Please hear my heart again. I'll pray, but I won't build. I'll pray, it's almost like, imagine if they all said, we'll all pray, and no one puts their hand to building. Now, please, what I'm saying. And that's what I've, as a leader, I've wanted to communicate is give sacrificially to this cause what God puts on your heart. But be obedient to what God puts on your heart. So I know there's a lot of people who have intentions. I've got a great intent. I want to, and then maybe you never acted on it. So I'm not talking about the ones who are already sacrificially given. You've already sacrificially given. But I'm saying just obey what God puts on your heart to give. And you'll be surprised what in our togetherness we could all do to get to where. I also believe the pedal of faith, putting on, get your foot on the pedal of faith, is there's $1 million offerings out there. I really believe people have spoken it. People have said to me, not now, but in a couple of years' time, they're going to sow a $1 million offering to this building. 2 different people said that. I have faith. Okay, wow, that's God. That's God doing that. God's touching their hearts. And they're capable into the future to do that. So not just hoping. But all I'm saying is I believe there are, and I know people have prayed and intercessors have said, we feel there's $1 million offering. So I'm saying to us, keep believing together that someone could just sow $1 million. And we need that. We right now at 1.7 million, we're believing God for that 1.7. That's the stage we're at, 1.7 million. We believe all that could come in. And then at the same time, my faith is still fighting for, 9 million can come in. All of it, completely paid off. Wouldn't that be amazing? Instead of having 5 years to pay it off, or 2 years to pay it off, or 10 years to pay it off, depends where our faith lands. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a big part of me that believes, oh, Lord, in 2 years we could pay all of it off. There's a big part of me that says. But at the same time, we almost got to plan because we don't know. I don't know how God's going to work. Does that make sense? I don't know. Abraham obeyed God in sacrificing his son when he walked up that mountain. He did not know how the ram was coming up on the other side. And God stopped him from sacrificing his son. And then he saw the ram behind him actually stuck in a thicket. In a bush, and he grabbed that ram, and that became the sacrifice. And he says, the Lord will provide on his mountain. So the Lord provides when you're in the right place, right time, right position. He was obeying God. But he didn't know how it was going to happen. I mean, it's stumbling away from its owner and its herd and whatever, and it was climbing the mountain all on its own, and that was the sacrifice. So I say to myself, Lord, I know you got the ram coming up on the other side of the mountain. I don't know how it's going to come. I don't know where. And a lot of times I remind myself, Leah, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the excitement of the adventure of you don't know how God's going to come through. Because I've learned this too. I'm learning this about this right now. If you don't learn to enjoy the journey, when you get to your little particular destinations, you won't enjoy the destination. It's true. And there's many destinations. You know, like the journey is in the train. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the view. If you're in Paris and you're training it from one city to another, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the view. Enjoy your food. Glass of vino. Enjoy it. But, and you get to a station, and that's your destination, and you might get out and experience the town. Enjoy that too, but enjoy everything. Because we're right now in the middle of the greatest miracle we've seen, and we just take for granted. Jerusalem's laying in ruins. It's fine. The people of God were okay with Jerusalem laying in ruins. And to a leader said, guys, we can see this happen. 52 days later, it was completely restored. And Nehemiah became the governor. He had the faith for it. He was feeding 150 people of his own servants. And he goes, I'm a governor, but I've never taken the governor's portion of food. I've always taken care of 150 people. Like he was just talking about, I'm not taking you, I'm not extracting from you. Nehemiah was saying that. So we need to fight together because I really believe it's in our togetherness we can see greatest miracle. And what's going to translate into? It's going to translate to the glory of God, the freedom, the liberty, to preach the gospel, seeing people saved, sending sons and daughters to plant churches. Imagine the strength we would have to be able to set up a church plant and just empower them to succeed. A church plant, a site, evangelists, crusades out in other nations. We want to raise up men and women that will actually transform our city. There's a difference between just wanting to gather a crowd. We want to equip an army to go out and disciple the world. Big difference, isn't it? So I was going to try to finish on this, and I know I've run out of time. There was something powerful about asking. Something powerful. As a leader, I know it's my responsibility to ask, and I have been for the last 2 years, and that's my leadership responsibility. Absolutely fine with it. I have to be dead to it, don't get me wrong. Even when online, we've asked people, our families, our friends that are extension, if you've seen our videos, where if you want to give to this cause, this purpose of what we're doing here, I have absolutely okay with asking because I see us as one body. I see us as one family. I see us as one kingdom. I see there's one Lord. So I have no problem with that. I still have to humble myself to ask though. Because it's easy. My flesh, my pride, we would do this on our own. No, we've got to be dead to that. So there's something powerful about asking. You know, God told the children of Israel before they left Egypt, before you leave, go to your neighbor and ask him for their jewelry, their gold, their silver, and their clothing. You got to remember the context. They just lost their firstborn son. And God said, asked. And they went and asked. And they said, yeah, get out of here. And they gave them the jewelry, the gold, and everything. Because they were extracted by them anyway. The way God sees it is they were forced to slave and work for them to get prosperous and rich. And they ill-treated God's people for 400 years. But they took the gold and silver because they asked. And many stories in the Bible says, ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open. You have not because you ask not, James says. But when you do ask, you ask and miss because you ask according to your own lust and your own flesh. But he's basically saying, ask